Hello, BookTube. I've got Friday reads for you. I don't know when I'm going to find the time to read, what with tilling the earth and dealing with thunder and lightning and rearranging this room. Maybe I should put off all those plans. They all sound very strenuous. Maybe I should just read all weekend instead. But one way or another, I have some books for you. These will not be all. I want again. I know I don't have to do this. I got emails and text messages from so many of you saying you don't have to defend yourself. We already know you're a freak. But I want to stress ahead of time, yes, this is a large number of books, but they are not long books. I read very fast, I sleep very little, and I do nothing else. This is all I do. So this is not unrealistic. These will not even be all that I read this weekend, probably. Because I'm counting the weekend as all of Friday, all of Saturday, all of Sunday, and all of Monday. That's a huge amount of time. But one of these books that I'm going to show you is going to take a long... I'm going to give a long time to it. Because the physical book in question is not going to survive my reading, so I want to get as much out of the experience as possible. So I want to show you just a few of these things, just to see if they're of interest to you. And the first one is this. Let's see if we can do this with the lighting here. This is Ron Stallworth's Black Klansman, a memoir about a black man infiltrating the Ku Klux Klan. And let me read you this. When Detective Ron Stallworth, the first black detective in the history of the Colorado Springs Police Department, comes across a classified ad in the local paper asking all wanting to join the Klan to contact a P.O. box, he responds with interest. He figures he'll receive a few brochures in the mail, maybe even a magazine, and learn more about the growing threat to his community. A few weeks later, the office phone rings and the caller asks Ron a question he thought he'd never have to answer. Would you like to join our cause? This is 1978. And the KKK is on the rise in the United States. Its grand wizard, David Duke, has made a name for himself, appearing on talk shows and in major magazine interviews, preaching a kinder Klan that wants nothing more than to preserve its heritage. Ron answers the caller's question that night with a yes, launching what is surely the most audacious and incredible undercover investigation in history. Ron recruits his partner Chuck to play the white Ron Stallworth, while Stallworth himself conducts all subsequent phone conversations. During the months-long investigation, Stallworth sabotages cross burnings, exposes white supremacists in the military, and even manages to deceive David Duke himself. And I was very happy that I got this. It comes out in June, I think it comes out in June. Yes, it comes out in early June. I was very happy to get it because I just watched the screener for the movie. It actually says on the cover, soon to be a major motion picture, and that motion picture is right around the corner, and it's terrific. The movie, Black Klansman, is terrific. It has Adam Driver in it as the white cop who stands in for Stallworth. And as an absolutely terrific cast, although I gotta say that for me, a large part of several scenes were stolen by Topher Grace as David Duke. I don't know who this kid's agent is, but anyway, one way or another, I just thought the movie was fantastic. And when I was watching it, I kept thinking, well, I should read the book. so now I have it, and it's, keep in mind, tiny. It's no more than an hour and 15 minutes reading time. And the next one is also tiny. It's by an author I really like. This is The World is a Narrow Bridge by Aaron Thier, who wrote a book called Mr. Eternity that I thought was just delightful. And this is... well, let me read you. Miami couple Murphy and Eva have almost decided to have a baby when Yahweh, the Old Testament God, appears to Eva and makes an unwelcome demand. He wants her to be his prophet. He also wants her to manage his social media presence. Yahweh sends the two on a wild road trip across the country, making incomprehensible demands and mandating arcane rituals as they go. He wants them to build a temple on top of a Florida landfill, to endure a period of biblical wandering in the deserts of the Southwest, and to mingle at a Montana summer camp for billionaires, hurtling through a national landscape of political chaos and environmental doom. Murphy and Eva search their surroundings for signs of a future they can have faith in. And I wanted to read you a bit from the very first time that Yahweh shows up. Eva thinks she's dreaming. She's pretty sure she's dreaming. And he shows up with a deputy. Yahweh is wearing sunglasses and an elegant linen shirt, and he's attended by a deputy angel of some kind. The deputy looks more or less like Yahweh himself, minus the sunglasses. Both have a Levantine cast of feature. In fact, they resemble Murphy, whose mother is a Lebanese Jew. "This is her?" Yahweh asks. "That's what I was told." He gazes searchingly at Eva and scratches his chin. Eva is not afraid. She knows that gods enjoy doing depraved things to human women, but it looks as if these two are here on business. "Can she talk?" says Yahweh. "She's said to have an attractive, throaty voice." "Ask her to say something." The angel nods. "You," he says, "can you speak?" Eva finds that she cannot. "She can't speak," says the angel. "She can speak. She's malingering. They always do." "You," says the angel, "repeat after me." Quote, "From the soles of the foot even unto the head there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and putrefying sores." Eva says, "From a sole and a foot and even into the head there are no sounds in it, but..." "She does have a nice voice," says Yahweh. "You," says the angel, "you will go where you are told to go. You will speak as you are told to speak. You will ask the people you meet, 'Have you heard the name of the Lord, which is Yahweh?' And then they'll know that he is the Lord. Do you agree?" "No." Yahweh crosses his arms. The angel leans forward and glares at her. "Do you agree?" Eva says, "I'm innocent. You've got the wrong woman." "This is how she behaves herself in the presence of the Lord," says Yahweh. "The Lord of hosts, slow to anger and always merciful. It never fails to amaze me." But it's a dream. It's just a dream. It must be a dream, because that's all there is. Next thing she knows, it's morning, and the dust is dancing in a thick bar of sunlight. And this is our author. I love that sort of thing. I loved Our Lady of the Lost and Found. I love this sort of thing, so I can't wait to get to it. And the next one, some of you may have seen it on my Instagram. Those of you who don't follow me on Instagram, you know who you are, and you know what to do. But this one is an advanced copy. This is coming out in the fall, but I'm not going to wait. It's by Dave Barry, the famous humorist, and this is Lessons from Lucy, about his old dog, who's not dead. She's alive in the course of the book. But he learns lessons about life from her. And I'm not going to be able to hold off since I had a Lucy of my own. And she was twice this dog's age. And I learned a lot. I don't think she had any life lessons to teach me, unless there are life lessons about farting. But I learned a lot in having... Lucy was special. She was not like any dog I've ever had. And that was a boundary-stretching experience on its own, so I'm not going to wait. I'll read this. I'll read it again in the fall, but I'm going to read it this weekend. And then the next one is the one that's going to take me a long time. I'm going to sink a lot of time into it. And this is David Friedrich Strauss's The Life of Jesus, Critically Examined. This is the translation into English of the 4th German edition. And the translation is done by George Eliot. And is wonderful. Just wonderful. It's literary in all the ways that he was not. Strauss's book is not literary. It has no eloquence anywhere in it. Marianne Evans, who translated this book, adds eloquence to what is a devastating, incredibly thought-provoking book about the factual basis of Christianity if you sift through the Gospels. And I just recently found this and realized how long it's been since I read it. And this is one of, I mentioned this in another video when I bring it up, this is one of those rare instances where the translation is better than the original. So even if I realize that it's been 15 or 20 years since I read Strauss, I wouldn't go back to D. Laban. I wouldn't go back to his book. I wouldn't want to if there's the better version. And this is a better version. So I'm going to sink a lot of time into this because this is just a crappy trade paperback. I doubt that I'll reinforce it before I read it, but I doubt that it will hold up even to one reading. And it is packed. Just packed. And dense in its thinking. So even though it's a long book, it's still going to take me even longer than normal, because you've got to unpack so much. I'm so happy to find it. Then the next one is YA. We've seen it on this channel before, but I just got the finished copy. This comes out in June. And as I've mentioned on this channel a few times before, when I get a finished copy of something, that's sort of my kick in the pants to, get to it. now, because the finished copy means the book's right around the corner. So when I get a finished copy of something I haven't read yet, I tend to use that as a spur to action. And that's this. It's by Kristen Chandler, and it's the Thief of Happy Endings. A moody young girl who used to love horses, but had a traumatic incident. Her horse threw her. She had a concussion. She had lots of stitches. And the implication in the beginning of the book is that changed her. It isn't just that it wasn't just a physical injury, that it did a lot to her personality. And as the novel opens, her parents are divorcing. They're ending what she insists on calling a storybook marriage, even though it clearly wasn't. And to get her away from school and her obsessions and her moodiness and their split up, to get her away from all of that, they send her to a camp in Wyoming, in the wilds of Wyoming, far from anywhere, 100 years from everywhere, as she puts it. And there she has to confront what has become a fear of horses. And there's all sorts of there's normal YA stuff. She immediately meets a goofy sidekick. She immediately meets a dreamy boy. But the chunk that I read, I really kind of liked. I thought it was smarter than its basic premise. And now that I have the finished copy, I will just read the whole thing and hope that it doesn't disappoint me. The next one is it's almost certainly going to be a bit of a trifle, but it's the kind of trifle that I love, and we've mentioned a few of them in the last year. They crop up. Presidential trifles. U.S. presidential trifles, where somebody comes out with an affectionate memoir. We saw The Lady in Red about Nancy Reagan. We saw Movie Night with the Reagans. These little things, they're not meant to be, foursquare historical documents. They're meant more as affectionate reflections on the people involved. I think they can be very valuable to historians, and they can also be quite touching. They remind you of something that in 2018 we have largely forgotten, which is that politicians are people. It can be hard in the midst of all the political toxicity to remember that, but it is true, and these books help us to remember that. One of the most famous examples was George W. Bush writing a biography / memoir / fond recollection of his father, the first President Bush. And this is along those same lines. This is George and Barbara Bush, A Great American Love Story. Again, very thin. This won't take any time at all to read. This was written by one of their granddaughters and a co-writer. And it's basically their relationship through thick and thin. A long marriage that only just ended. I mean, Barbara Bush just died just recently. For anyone who grew up with the Bushes, for anyone who knew them in Kennebunkport or wherever, and especially for anyone who read about them or wrote about them, it's impossible to imagine him without her. So I can only imagine how impossible it must be for him to just, look over to your left and she's not there for the first time in 60 years. But this is their love story, how they met. I imagine it will spend a lot of time on their time in the White House. And I'm looking forward to it. I don't call it a trifle in any negative sense. It's a lightweight thing, hence the length. But I'm looking forward to it. And then I don't know if I'll read these in this order because that might be a bit of a shock. But the next one is David Runciman. This is How Democracy Ends, and it's his book about the ways that democracy ends. And his warning is that we shouldn't look to historical examples as an explicit blueprint of how current-day democracies will end. It's rather sobering that one of his starting assumptions is that all our present-day democracies are going to end, and probably in our own lifetimes. That's a pretty startling way to start a book. I don't think anyone would have started a book like that before a racist, sexist, fascist, lying moron TV star was elected president of the United States and started making wild threats of nuclear annihilation on a social media platform. Before that, I think people would have thought good president, bad president, disastrous president. But I don't think anybody would have thought end of democracy as we know it, end of America as we know it. Since that election, there's been a flood of such books, and this is the latest one. I'm not missing any of them. I'm reading them all. This author, I believe, in talks about this book, says that the key thing to remember is that history doesn't explicitly repeat itself. And that therefore, if we're thinking about the death of the American democracy, we shouldn't be thinking about tanks in the street or political uprisings or anything like that, because the death of American democracy will take a different form. In fact, the cover copy says, "We need to stop looking for tanks in the streets and start looking for the 21st century symptoms. The real danger to democracy lies in our increasingly decayed institutions. We are more at risk from con men than from extremists. We are more likely to see our democracy hollowed out by technology than taken over by tyrants." I myself have, I'll see what kind of a nuanced job this author does, but I myself have a different view of I think this is explicitly following historical norms, only not tanks in the streets. You have to go further back to Rome, to ancient Rome. And I think what we're seeing now is the civilian equivalent of General Marius. People think, the Roman Republic lived for hundreds and hundreds of years, governed a large chunk of its world through vaguely representative government. No Roman thought they were a slave, except the slaves. But the Roman citizens didn't think they were slaves. And then most people, they look at what they remember of Roman history and they think, and then that ended with Julius Caesar and it became an empire. And all of a sudden, there were emperors. And it was, a strict autocracy. That isn't true, though. Julius Caesar was only the last in a line of opportunists. And if you were going to look at the way that Rome's democracy ended, its quasi-democracy, its representative government of any kind ended, you would have to look at that series of people, each one of whom was willing to take another hammer blow at the lifeblood of ancient Rome. So what we're seeing is General Marius. Then there will be a Sulla. Then there will be chaos. And then there will be Caesar. I'm hoping I'm wrong about all that. I'm actually hoping that Runciman is wrong as well. I'm hoping that democracy, in the way that we have built it now, is hardier than he thinks. And I think there's a chance that might be true. Because the one thing that American-style democracy, that modern, Western, liberal-style democracy has, that earlier democracies didn't have in anywhere like the same extent, and that makes them more hardy, is capitalism. Because if you wed democracy to capitalism for everybody, not just for the ruling elite, then all of a sudden you've got hundreds of millions of people who don't want to see a system change. Once they realize that they will lose X, Y, and Z freedom, you've got hundreds of millions of people who are at stake, who have a stake in it, instead of only tens of thousands of people. I think that might give modern democracies, all of which are embattled everywhere in the Western world, but still, I think that might give them a firmer footing to live than a lot of critics are saying. And I'll be interested in seeing what Runciman says. But anyway, that is, sorry, I've gone on and on again, sorry. That is my Friday reads for today. I will come back on Monday and talk more about what I read, because there'll be more, and I don't know, some of these things are trifles. The Lessons from Lucy, well, this won't take long at all to read. Look at how short it is. And this thing, George and Barbara Bush, will not take long at all to read. That's 2 hours reading right there. Out of a weekend in which, again, all right, okay, you've told me over and again I don't have to justify myself. So, George and Barbara Bush. Then Thief of Happy Endings, a promising YA novel. I'm going to do angle with the sun here. The sun is creeping around to my garden. Then The Life of Jesus, critically examined, in a translation by George Eliot. Then Lessons from Lucy by Dave Barry. The World is a Narrow Bridge by Aaron Thier. And Black Klansman by Ron Stallworth, his memoir of infiltrating the Klan. And that's my Friday reads, at least partially for now. And as usual, I want to hear what you're reading. What are you reading this weekend? I'd love to hear it all. For those of you in America, are a lot of you enjoying a long weekend? I never know whether or not that phrase is true anymore. Here in America, Monday is a federal holiday. And so the natural way is for people to talk about having a long weekend. But I know so many Americans who work 2 jobs, or the job they have is retail, so they're at beck and call any time of the day or night, so they don't have weekends off anymore. I know plenty of people who are working on the holiday, so I'd love to hear about that too. Do you have a long weekend? And if so, what you're settling in to read, just tell me all. And I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.